The most shocking statement about the Madeleine McCann case didn't come from the police nor from a witness. It came from Madeleine's grandmother, Susan Healy. In an interview that the media conveniently buried, she said that if she had been there that night, she would have shaken the parents for leaving the children alone. This isn't just a grandmother's grief. It's the first crack in the image of a united family. It's proof that, behind the public facade, a secret war was being waged. And today we are going to expose that war. The story the world knows is an almost perfect script of tragedy. Praia da Luz, Portugal, a family resort. A group of successful and responsible doctor friends enjoying dinner while their children sleep nearby. The night is shattered by the scream of a mother, Kate McCann, upon discovering the bed of her 3-year-old daughter, Madeleine, empty. What follows is a narrative of horror. A daring kidnapper, an innocent family, and a global search for the lost child. The image of an open window and an empty room becomes the symbol of a perfect crime, a mystery that for over a decade has seemed unsolvable. That's the version that was carefully packaged for public consumption. But the truth, as always, lies in the details that were conveniently omitted. That's why this task force exists. We already have investigators joining from all over Latin America, Europe, and the United States, all united by one goal: to expose the truth behind the narrative. From which city are you enlisting for this operation? Leave a comment. It's a powerful reminder that the search for truth is a global movement. Now let's get to work. But what if the biggest battle in the McCann case wasn't against a kidnapper, but within the family itself? The shocking truth is that while the McCanns projected an image of unity and strength to the world, their own parents, Madeleine's grandparents, were expressing doubts, regrets, and criticisms that directly contradicted the official narrative. And exposing this secret war, this family tension, is the first step of our mission. Operation Checkmate. The goal of this operation is methodical and relentless: to build the undeniable file. A public, detailed, and verified dossier of every inconsistency, every ignored piece of evidence, and every procedural failure that allowed the truth to be distorted. Each analysis we do here isn't just a video. It's a document we add to this file. We aren't just retelling a tragedy. We are building the case that should have been built in 2007. And today, the construction begins. To build this case, we first need to understand the human dynamics that shaped the investigation from day one. We will analyze the forgotten statements of the grandparents, the Healys, and discover how their pain and regret reveal a truth that the McCanns themselves fought to hide. To understand the secret war, we first need to understand the battlefield. And the initial battlefield wasn't the media or the courts, but the family itself. In the first days after the disappearance, the projected image was one of total unity. The maternal grandparents, Susan and Brian Healy, flew to Portugal to support their daughter, Kate, and son-in-law, Gerry. In front of the cameras, they were the picture of solidarity, defending the McCanns against any suggestion of negligence. But behind the scenes, a different story was beginning to form. The first crack in the facade of unity came from an unexpected source: Kate McCann's diary. Seized by the Portuguese police, the diary, though never fully released, contained, according to investigation sources, notes that revealed the immense stress and difficulty Kate felt in dealing with her 3 young children, especially Madeleine's hyperactivity. This is not an accusation, but a crucial human context. The perfect mother image that the media was building was already, in itself, a fiction. The second crack, much deeper, came from the grandparents themselves. In 2008, a year after the disappearance, when the dust from the initial investigation had settled and the McCanns were no longer formal suspects, Susan Healy, the grandmother, gave an interview to the Liverpool Echo newspaper. And what she said was a bombshell. She admitted that upon learning that Kate and Gerry had left the children alone to go to dinner, her first reaction was one of shock and anger. She used the phrase that would become the epicenter of the secret war: "I would have shaken them." She continued, saying that although she understood their logic, her maternal instinct screamed that it was wrong. For the first time, a member of the family's inner circle broke the pact of silence and validated the feeling of millions of people around the world. The decision to leave the children alone was, at the very least, a catastrophic failure of judgment. Kate's father, Brian Healy, though more restrained, also expressed his frustration, not with his daughter, but with the bloody lies that, according to him, the Portuguese police and the media were spreading. His anger was directed outward, but the source of the pain was the same, the decision that put his granddaughter in danger. We have two conflicting narratives: the McCanns' public narrative that they were responsible parents and victims of an unforeseeable crime, and the Healys' private narrative of shock and regret over their own children's decision. Which of these two stories seems more authentic to you, the public defense or the private regret? Leave your analysis in the comments. Every theory from you is an intelligence report we add to our file. Together, we are mapping the weaknesses of the official narrative. The secret war wasn't just about the decision to leave the children alone, it was about controlling the narrative. The McCanns, with their sophisticated public relations campaign, built a story of abduction by a predator. This narrative, though unproven, served a crucial purpose. It absolved them of any moral responsibility. If a monster broke into the room, they are not negligent parents. They are simply victims of pure evil. The grandparents, on the other hand, seemed trapped between loyalty to their daughter and the uncomfortable truth of their own feelings. Their public statements were a careful dance. They supported the search for Madeleine, but they couldn't completely hide their discomfort with the circumstances that led to her disappearance. This tension, this dissonance between what was said in public and what was felt in private, is the key to understanding the complex psychology of this case. This is not about a family of criminals, but perhaps a family broken by trauma, guilt, and the weight of a secret. Science, in the form of psychological analysis, gives us a tool to understand this dynamic. The concept of tribal loyalty explains why the Healys, even while disagreeing with the decision, would publicly defend the McCanns. In a crisis situation, the family unites against the external threat, be it the police, the media, or public opinion. To criticize one of their own would be seen as a betrayal, but the guilt and regret don't disappear. They leak out. They leaked out in Susan Healy's interview. They leaked out in Brian Healy's anger. The secret war was not a war of accusations, but a war of repressed emotions. The truth was not in what they said, but in what they were desperately trying not to say. The story of the McCann and Healy family is not a story of good versus evil. It is a modern Greek tragedy about how a single decision, a single night, can create cracks so deep in a family that they never close again. Science was screaming that the family dynamic was far more complex than the image of perfect unity we were sold. Psychology was showing that behind the unconditional support, there was a layer of regret and conflict. So if the family itself was at war with itself over the narrative of events, what does that tell us about the truth of what really happened that night? To answer that, we need to do what the police never did: reconstruct the night of the crime, not from the perspective of a kidnapping, but from the perspective of a family under immense pressure, where one wrong decision may have led to unimaginable consequences. Forget the story of a kidnapping. The real night, based on the evidence and the pre-existing family tension, likely happened in a much more intimate and, for that very reason, more tragic way. Let's reconstruct that night, not as fiction, but as a logical deduction. It's 8:30 p.m. The children are asleep. But something goes wrong. An accident, a fall, a medication error to make them sleep, something Kate McCann admitted to having considered. There is no monster outside. The monster now is panic, inside those four walls. When Gerry McCann does his check around 9:05 p.m., he doesn't find his daughter sleeping peacefully. He finds her lifeless. The panic of two doctors who know they will be accused of negligence takes over. Their careers, their reputations, their image as a perfect family, everything is at risk. The decision they make in the following minutes is not that of grieving parents, but of professionals in damage control mode. Madeleine's body needs to disappear. Kate's scream at 10 p.m., "They've taken her," is not the cry of discovering a kidnapping. It's the beginning of the performance. It's the opening act of a play they will be forced to stage for the rest of their lives. The girl's body is hidden, perhaps in the apartment itself, perhaps in a nearby location. The alerts from the sniffer dogs behind the sofa and in the parents' wardrobe support this theory. The body remained there long enough for the decomposition process to begin, releasing the odor the dogs would detect weeks later. The frantic search that follows is not a search for a living child, it's a distraction. It's a way to contaminate the crime scene, to create chaos, to ensure that any real evidence is lost amidst the panic of dozens of well-intentioned people. In the following days, while the world weeps for a kidnapped girl, the parents are actually dealing with a logistical problem: how to permanently dispose of their daughter's body. This is where the car rented 25 days later comes into the story. The vehicle becomes the tool to transport Madeleine's body from its temporary hiding place to its final resting place. That's why the sniffer dogs, Eddie and Keela, alerted to the scent of death and blood in that trunk. It wasn't a kidnapper who used that car. It was the parents themselves in a desperate act to complete the cover-up. Understanding the what is only half the equation. To grasp the depth of this tragedy, we need to understand the why. Why would a couple of doctors, people trained to save lives, choose a path of deception instead of facing the truth of an accident? The answer lies in the psychology of self-preservation and the overwhelming fear of shame. Kate and Gerry McCann weren't just parents. They were successful doctors, respected members of their community. Their image was one of competence, control, and perfection. Admitting that their daughter died due to negligence, even if accidental under their care, would be the complete destruction of that identity. The fear here is not just of legal punishment, it's the fear of public humiliation, the fear of being seen as monster parents, the fear of losing everything they had built. Faced with this abyss, the human brain enters a mode of denial and rationalization. The lie, however complex, seems like a safer option than the devastating truth. They don't see themselves as criminals, but as victims of a terrible circumstance, doing what is necessary to protect what's left of their family. The media campaign they launch is not just a search for Madeleine, it's the construction of a narrative fortress. Every interview, every emotional appeal, every photo with celebrities and world leaders is another brick in the wall that protects them from the truth. They become the protagonists of a global tragedy, a role that, paradoxically, makes them immune to any serious suspicion. Questioning them is no longer an act of investigation, it becomes an act of cruelty. They shield themselves with the world's sympathy, a brilliant and terribly effective psychological strategy. So far, does this reconstruction of the facts based on the psychology of fear and self-preservation seem more plausible than the story of a phantom kidnapper who left no trace? Does the logic of a cover-up better explain the contradictory evidence than the pain of genuine grief? Leave your verdict in the comments. Your agreement is the green light our operation needs to use our most powerful proof, because the evidence I'm about to show you is not a theory, it's the proof that seals this case. The definitive proof, the move that puts the official narrative in checkmate, didn't come from a dog or a fiber. It came from Gerry McCann's pocket. It's a piece of technological evidence that was discovered, analyzed, and then conveniently buried by the British police themselves. I'm referring to the data from Gerry McCann's cell phone on the night of May 3rd. The official version, the McCann's alibi, depends entirely on the belief that they remained in the tapas restaurant area throughout the dinner. However, the geolocation records from Gerry's cell phone, obtained by the Portuguese police, tell a very different story. The data shows that at a crucial moment of the night, during the time window when Madeleine disappeared, Gerry's phone connected to a cell tower that served a completely different area, a remote and unfrequented hill on the outskirts of Praia da Luz. There was no signal overlap. It was technically impossible for the phone to be at the restaurant and connected to that tower at the same time. The Portuguese police, led by Gonçalo Amaral, saw this as irrefutable proof that the alibi was false. Gerry McCann, or at least his phone, was not at dinner. He was in the area where, according to the accident theory, a child's body could be easily concealed. This evidence, by itself, destroys the timeline presented by the McCanns and their friends. It's the digital proof that there was a deception. When confronted with this data, the British government and its task force, Operation Grange, did something extraordinary. Instead of thoroughly investigating this discrepancy, they hired their own experts to create an alternative narrative, suggesting that the data could be the result of an anomalous signal reflection, a theory that was ridiculed by many telecommunications experts. They didn't refute the evidence. They obfuscated it with technical jargon to confuse the public and the media. They chose to protect the narrative instead of following the digital truth. With this irrefutable proof on the table, the central question of our investigation changes drastically. It's no longer what happened to Madeleine, but rather, why did the justice system and the British government work so hard to hide the truth? The answer, operators, involves a web of influence, power, and secrets that goes far beyond a panicked couple. It involves the state itself acting to protect an image at any cost. With the digital and canine evidence pointing to a cover-up, the system's reaction was not to seek the truth, but to protect the narrative at all costs. What followed was not an investigation, but a campaign of suppression. Because of the sniffer dog's alerts, the consequence was not a deeper forensic analysis of the indicated locations, but a media campaign led by the British press to discredit the dogs themselves and their handlers, labeling them as unreliable because of Gerry McCann's cell phone data, which destroyed his alibi. The consequence was not a rigorous interrogation, but the creation of pseudo-scientific theories about signal reflections to neutralize the digital evidence. The McCann's public relations machine, backed by powerful figures, was stronger than the Portuguese police's search for justice. The official narrative, that of the kidnapping, became a matter of national and diplomatic pride. The British government, under the leadership of Gordon Brown at the time, intervened directly, offering logistical and political support to the McCanns. This intervention had a paralyzing effect on the Portuguese investigation. The local police, who dared to name the McCanns as suspects based on evidence, found themselves isolated and internationally criticized. The system was no longer looking for a missing child. It was managing an image crisis. The truth became secondary to maintaining a story that was more palatable to the public and more convenient for the powerful. The price of this suppression campaign was paid in lives and careers. The first and most notable collateral victim was the Portuguese detective Gonçalo Amaral. As the coordinator of the investigation, he was the man who followed the evidence to its logical conclusion, daring to point to the possibility of an accident and cover-up. For his courage, his career was destroyed. He was abruptly removed from the case under flimsy pretexts, just as his investigation was closing in on the truth. After publishing a book detailing the evidence he had collected, he was dragged through a legal battle lasting more than a decade, initiated by the McCanns. He was silenced, sued, and financially ruined, turned from hero to villain by the same media that refused to examine the evidence he presented. His story is a grim warning of what happens when you challenge power. But he wasn't the only victim. The Smith family, the Irish tourists whose testimony placed Gerry McCann far from the restaurant, were subjected to intense scrutiny and pressure to the point of partially retracting their statements. Confused and intimidated, they saw a fact, and for daring to report it, they were dragged into the center of a media hurricane. The human cost of this cover-up is profound. It's the story of honest men and women who were punished for telling the truth, while those who built a narrative of deceit were protected and celebrated as tragic heroes. It's the story of how a system can turn against its own agents to protect a convenient lie. It's outrageous, it's frustrating, and that is exactly why Operation Black Box exists. If you also refuse to accept the silence and believe that the truth needs to be leaked, then this is your call. Officially join the operation. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every subscription is a new agent enlisting, making our movement stronger and proving that we will not stop until the black box is opened. The moral verdict of this story is painfully clear. Despite the forensic, digital, and testimonial evidence pointing to a domestic tragedy followed by a cover-up, official justice has never been served. The Madeleine McCann case remains, to the world, unsolved. But we must be honest. It is not unsolved for a lack of clues. It is unsolved for a lack of will. The accident and cover-up theory explains the dog alerts, the cell phone data, the contradictions in the testimonies, and the absence of any trace of a kidnapper. The kidnapping theory explains none of this, yet it was the latter that prevailed. Why? Because it was the story everyone wanted to hear. The story of an external monster, not an internal mistake. The story that allowed for a villain hunt instead of a painful introspection about negligence and deceit. The case wasn't closed. It was abandoned. And in that abandonment, justice for Madeleine was denied twice. Once on the night her life ended, and again, every day that the truth about her death has been deliberately suppressed. The system won. Justice was buried. But in the midst of all this darkness, one final question remains, the most personal of all. What does this terrible story teach us about our own world, and what do we do with this inconvenient truth? The inconvenient truth this story teaches us is that sometimes family loyalty doesn't serve to protect but to imprison. My final conviction, after analyzing every statement and every silence, is that the secret war between the McCanns and the Healys was not a war of accusations, but a war against their own conscience. What haunts me is not the possibility of a crime, but the certainty of a regret so deep that it had to be buried under a facade of unity. A regret that leaked through the lines of the grandparents' statements, the true silent victims of this tragedy. And now, after we've gone through this journey together, I need to know what this story has awakened in you. Use the comment section below, not to judge, but to bear witness. Witness the complexity of family pain. Leave a word, a sentence, that shows we understand that behind the spectacle, there is a human wound that has never healed. I will read every comment, because in a world that demands heroes and villains, our empathy is the only act of resistance. And for those who want to go beyond bearing witness and want to help fund the next phase of Operation Black Box, there are two ways to do it now. First, you can use the Super Chat to invest directly in our next intelligence acquisition. Every contribution of any amount helps us obtain the next confidential document or pay for the next forensic analysis. It's your way of funding the ammunition we will use to break the next lock. Second, for those who want a seat at the strategy table, you can become a channel member. Members are our elite operators. They not only ensure the continuous funding of the operation, but have access to our war room. They see the documents before anyone else, vote on the next targets and discuss strategies in a closed group. The Super Chat funds the next move. Being a member helps draw the game map. The choice is yours. And it is thanks to the support of our operators that the next phase of Operation Black Box is already underway. In our next video, we will expose the contradictions in the testimonies of the couple's friends, breaking another lock that protects the truth. To continue in this operation with us, subscribe and turn on notifications. The search for the black box cannot stop. Until next time, remember, we will not ask for the truth. We will leak the truth.